Welcome back to the podcast. Today is a little bit of a different episode compared to the rest. I wanted to share my health journey, so what I went through over the past 3, 4 years now, and it's something I've never shared before. And the reason for that is because for a while I was still kind of on the tail end of it, wasn't 100% resolved until fairly recently. So I feel like talking about something negative with no light at the end of the tunnel makes people almost feel like bad for you. And I did not want to come across, playing the victim card or the victim mentality. So didn't want to come across like that. So now it's completely resolved. I'm healed back to 100%. So I thought it was a good time to put this out and also kind of give you guys a lens into understanding why I'm so into the health side of things, not only getting in good shape, looking good, progressing my physique, but optimizing health to have more energy, perform better mentally, because when those things are deprived from you, honestly, it's a pretty terrible feeling. You're not able to think at 100%, speak like your verbal fluency, so you're not showing up as the person you can be. So, anyways, well, I guess I got to take it back to 2021, which is when this whole thing kind of kicked off. So, this was the start of my transformation when I was a big boy, fat guy. Had done a whole bunch of yo-yo dieting, which definitely didn't help my immune system. But in 2022, I lost 60 pounds straight, went from 190 to 130 with no diet breaks, no fatigue management, just chronic dieting combined with overtraining, lots and lots of cardio. Towards the end, 1,400 calories a day, some days lower. On top of that, I followed a IIFYM approach, so if it fits your macros approach. So I would be fitting in processed foods and anabolic recipes just to hit my numbers. And obviously, carbs are better tasting, more voluminous than fats, so completely neglected fats, which you need for hormone production. So quite the combination we got there. Chronic dieting, overtraining, micronutrient deficiencies led to me crashing my hormones. Literally had a testosterone of zero point 0.7, which is absurd. And overall, on top of the not just the testosterone, but a very poor overall state of health. So that summer, went to camp. Over the summer camp, which was right when I finished that diet, in that state of health with that hormones, with my immune system in the gutter, and I got extremely sick. Now, there was something going around, still don't know if it was COVID or something else, but looking back, and this is all complete speculation because I didn't know that a test even that you could test for things to see what was wrong. Didn't know that my blood work could give me an insight. So that whole 1 month and a bit, I had chronic fatigue, GI issues, brain fog. Wasn't fun to say the least. And on top of that, we'd have days off because me and my friends were on staff. So then I'd be drinking, putting alcohol on top of that, which God knows how much damage that caused my gut. And then the burden on my immune system in that state of health. So it's just a shit show overall. And they served us raw chicken one time. I was eating way too much tuna. Just fucked up time pretty much. So got back from camp. I was still in the gutter, had extreme fatigue, GI issues, had like a metal taste in my mouth, all of these symptoms. So went to my doctor. Basically, got brushed off. I like completely no help. I would love to get a hold of what my blood work looked like then at that point because there was certainly something seriously off. But all I remember is this guy focusing on my slightly elevated creatinine, telling me I was gonna have to hop on creatine, and this was 2022. Like, are you serious, man? You're not considering protein, how much I train. Telling me to hop off creatine in 2022 is pretty crazy. Anyway, ridiculous. Didn't take that into account that I'm training hard, nothing. That's what he was focused on. So that's when I started to grasp and look elsewhere, do my own research, listen to a ton of podcasts with doctors and functional medicine practitioners actually up to date with the latest research, more specifically doctors practicing functional medicine, respected functional health coaches and practitioners as well, listening to what they have to say about finding the root cause approach to the symptoms I was experiencing, try to figure out what was actually causing this. So that was when I got back from camp. And at that time, I started working with my first bodybuilding coach as well, which, despite dealing with these symptoms and being in that state, made some pretty decent progress for that. But one thing I realized during this time is that no one is coming to save me. My health is in my hands alone. So during this time, out of basically desperation, I became more and more obsessed, honestly, with finding the root cause and learning about how to interpret blood work, and found out you can do a stool analysis to objectively see what's going on in your gut. All these things like heavy metal tests. And I remember the first test I got, I was still brand new to this whole functional testing thing. I knew very little compared to what I know now, even though now I still have a shit ton to learn. But for some reason, whey protein, I couldn't eat it. That was something, apparently I developed an intolerance to it. So I was like, okay, what else am I eating that was potentially not agreeing with me? So I got a food sensitivity test, which looking back did, in all fairness, give me a good insight and kicked off my testing spur, you could say. But not an amazing test to do, let alone pay for it. It was like $400. So anyway, that came back and it showed a whole bunch of foods that flagged, which is a good indication that there's some level of intestinal permeability, otherwise known as leaky gut, which is when the intestinal wall becomes damaged, compromised, and then food particles or stuff that's not supposed to pass through can enter your bloodstream. And then when that happens, your body thinks there's foreign invaders. So it'll create antibodies, and this leads to what I found out later down the line. So got that. It was called the RMA FST, food sensitivity test, and that was kind of the first, let's say, domino to fall, where I was like, oh, something's not right here. So I decided to go get blood work done, and getting the markers I wanted was a hassle for my doctor, which is unfortunately the case here in Canada, but got that done, came back, and sure enough, my TSH, so the thyroid stimulating hormone, was through the roof. I was subclinical, hypothyroid. My white blood cells, which are a representation of your immune system, were completely out of whack. And my doctor's answer to all of this was to put me on thyroid replacement, not investigate why my thyroid is not functioning properly, not dive deeper into what's going on with my white blood cells and my immune system. So, again, it was on me. I took his thoughts into consideration, of course, but because I'm not a doctor, but I knew I'd just be masking a symptom with a medication and not whatever's going on, and whatever was underlying, which was causing this, was still going to be wreaking havoc on my system, whatever was causing this dysfunction. So went to at that point different when I realized I gotta do something here. I gotta see if I can find out another expert or someone in that field. So I went to a couple different naturopaths to see if they could give me an answer. Got one to order me a stool analysis because the GI issues hadn't gone away. That showed pretty good insight into my gut. So I got that back, saw gut dysbiosis, which is when there's higher amounts of opportunistic or bad bacteria in the gut than there are good guys. So the opportunistic guys, the bad guys kind of outweigh the good guys. So there's more bad guys than there should be. Think of it like bad guys crowding out the good guys. Now, that doctor didn't really know how to treat that, so I was just given one antimicrobial supplement, and this went on for about 3 months. So I'm working with this naturopath doctor who now is definitely step up from my family doctor. Saw my TSH was like, oh, maybe let's try some ashwagandha. But as time went on, not really feeling much better. I was also dieting at the time, and I pushed the diet too far, largely to try to get lean for social media, try to get shredded for my coaching business, which I just started when all of this was going on. So definitely not the smart move, but super stubborn. So now we're at the end of 2023, the start of 2024, and everything that's messing me up is still present. On top of this, I'm causing a whole another level of stress trying to get shredded, and that put me in another hole. And to be completely transparent, had some level of health anxiety about the whole thing as well. You overthinking symptoms, thinking worst case scenario. But by this time, I understood that I not only need to do some more testing to figure out what's going on, but also work with someone who knows how to solve these issues at a root cause level and know what to test for. So I got some more comprehensive blood work done, another GI test, and at this point I was hypothyroid. I had high thyroid antibodies, so some autoimmunity, leaky gut, gut dysbiosis, H. pylori infection, inflammation markers were off the charts. So low level of heavy metal toxicity, but it was present. So luckily at the time, my bodybuilding coach put me in contact and actually paid for my first consult with now my current coach, who is extremely well versed in functional health, works through a lot of these cases. So very grateful for him, because if he hadn't put me in contact, I'd probably still be in that position or trying to work myself through it. So very grateful for him. And then this is when I finally started to the slow road to healing, and that required me to take a step away from dieting and focus on lowering my total stress load, repairing the gut, fixing the dysbiosis, supporting detox pathways, lowering the inflammation. And I'm not going to go into the exact details of how we approached it, the protocol, supplementation, etc., because that would be a whole podcast in itself on each of those. But if you feel free to DM me if you're curious. But my body was in such a stressed and inflamed state that I couldn't really train properly. I had to train like 4 reps in reserve. Motivation was in the drain, still had low energy, very poor cognitive function, which if anyone has dealt with something similar, I would say poor cognitive function, if you're more of, let's say, type A person, is the worst because you could be operating at a much higher level, but you're almost handicapped or handcuffed. And my physique regressed pretty significantly, all while I was just trying to build my coaching business. So this was probably the lowest point of my life. I don't know. I don't like to throw around the word depressed, but the gut is tightly linked to neurotransmitters along with the high TSH also being associated with depression. So looking back, it's hard to put myself in that headspace, but overall, let's just say quality of life not at an all-time high. So your body's not going to be also producing testosterone optimally when it's in that state. So that was in the gutter, and man, it was a tough time looking back. I lived with 3 of my best friends. Honestly, could barely enjoy it. So nevertheless, slowly but surely, we started to fix these issues. It took a while, but during this time, I was continuing to dive into the functional health side of things. Did a ton of actually very good courses outside of school. Did actually a human physiology course at uni, which was honestly great at teaching me the foundation and anatomy, physiology. Went into basic chemistry, cell physiology, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the gut, a decent amount of blood work stuff as well, which really gave me a great foundation to be able to understand what does this mean, what does that do, understand what various guys were talking about, because every day I'd be listening to some type of health focused podcast, trying to really understand what's going on, and also just asking a ridiculous amount of questions every time I would consult with my coach who was helping me fix these issues before I decided to work with him in a one-to-one capacity, which I did summer 2024. So was developing my knowledge on blood work interpretation, reading GI maps, how to assess various labs. And when I started working with my coach one-on-one, that's when the healing process really sped up. Spent a good amount of money on testing, and we repaired the thyroid. Inflammation came down. Did another stool analysis. This one picked up a parasite. So not only did I have gut dysbiosis, which we now fixed, H. pylori, which we fixed, gut inflammation came down significantly. My adrenal function was still a little suboptimal, which your sodium to potassium ratio on your blood work can give you an insight into, but also must have got a parasite that summer as well, which was likely why my eosinophils were elevated looking back 2 years ago, which of course my doctor at the time didn't look into. Anyway, we worked through that, and I would say I was basically 90% better at the start of 2025. At this point, I was ready to be actually able to adapt to the training stimulus. We were able to run a little fat loss phase. I was like, yes, because I did not like the way I looked, and I was finally able to make progress towards my physique again. Big things happened in terms of cognitive function. My energy returned. I could think clearly, and the next 6 months were pretty damn good. So I felt more confident in my physique again. So I had the confidence to fairly recently start creating content again. Not only just that side of things, but had the mental capacity and cognitive function to be able to provide a high level of service to my clients, to be able to actually articulate myself, retain information, which for some of you listening might be like, what are you talking about? But anyone who has been through a similar situation, whether that be anything that affects cognitive function, like mold can do that, different viruses, it's pretty tough. You're half the person, literally. Now, hindsight is a great thing, but looking back, going through that was almost a blessing in disguise, because your pain points and struggles often turn into your passion. So out of complete desperation, my health was in my hands at 17. I dove deep into health. I would have never gone beyond just surface level training and macros. And because of that, now I'm able to have greater impact on clients' lives as a whole, getting them physique transformation, of course, but when you prioritize your health, changes in your physique happen a hell of a lot faster. The body will only adapt to the degree it's healthy. So not only that, but be able to have an impact on my family's health. If I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't even know about all the testing we could do. Getting my mom doing preventative testing, which is not really a thing here, or at least in my bubble. Making sure every time we go to the States, we're doing comprehensive panels. Getting her in touch with top longevity doctors to catch things early. Optimizing her health, my brother's health. Not waiting for them to well, not my brother, but my mom to reach a disease state, which unfortunately, at least in Canada, is often how it goes. You're within the reference range, but you're not normal, let's say, and then they only start to do something once you flag. So I think that is changing quite dramatically now with this new kind of wave, I would say, of a podcastification of medicine, being able to listen, have access to leading doctors in their field. But none of that would have happened, nor would I have such a passion for it if I hadn't have gone through all that. So with all that said, that's the health journey, what I went through, how it fueled what I do now, why I'm so interested in optimizing my own health, learning about health and performance, optimizing performance. So, what are my goals from here? Well, I have a few: to continuously strive for optimal health, optimal cognitive performance, energy, most importantly, the physique. So, basically, superhuman, everything I do. If you guys watch my videos and you're like, why does this guy take his health so seriously? Like, you're 20, you're optimizing your sleep. Well, everything I do is to take me towards those goals. So, I hope this podcast gave you a little more insight into my journey. If you're currently going through similar issues, my advice, not medical advice, would be to get in touch with a good doctor. If you're in the States, you have an absurd amount of options. If you're in Canada, not as much, but they are out there. Don't settle for anything but the root cause. If they don't know why X is happening or aren't willing to investigate it and truly find out what's going on, not just here's X medication to mask X symptom, then find someone else. And I've had two friends now who were on the colitis path going through the Western medicine approach, and because of what I've been through, I was able to give them perspective on what path they're going down, and that they decided, because of that, to consult with practitioners and doctors well versed in functional medicine, and were actually able to solve their issues and avoid what would have been a long road down the Western medicine path. So now I do feel like I have to say this because I'm kind of just like shitting on doctors a little bit, which is not my intention, because they are all extremely commendable. I would say all of them have extremely good intentions. They're just limited, and they're great if you have an acute issue. Let's say emergency medicine is needed. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about, an emergency. Or if you needed a knee, ankle surgery, you're going to go have a procedure with an orthopedist. But for some of these lifestyle driven conditions, if someone were to go to their primary care physician and then go to a gastroenterologist, they're given things like, let's say, proton pump inhibitors, antacids, laxative, antibiotics for the gut issues. Now, are antibiotics a potential course of treatment for certain infections? Yes, but there are imbalances that exist where people may be prescribed antibiotics and it could have actually been resolved through nutrition, supplementation, things like digestive enzymes, probiotics, gut lining repair supplements, and herbal antimicrobials. So it's not always doctor's fault. They're often stuck in a system that gives them, let's say, 15 minutes per patient, limited time for continued education, and they're bound by sometimes insurance driven protocols, which is pretty sad, but it is what it is. So most are trained to look for red flags and then prescribe medications to treat what's diagnosable, not necessarily to optimize health or resolve subclinical issues. And the data supports that, like the Mayo Clinic study, where they did a study where only 12% of initial diagnoses were entirely accurate and 21% were completely wrong. So that's 1 out of 5 cases where the first diagnosis missed the mark entirely. So I'll leave you with that. I hope this podcast gave you some insight into my journey, my lens into health and fitness, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.